From 700 BC to 300 BC, the ancient Greek philosophy blossomed and it reached its height. These ancient philosophers challenged the way humans viewed the world. For example, before this time period, mythology and superstition was used to explain how the universe came into being. But these philosophers, they replaced mythology with rationalism. Different cultures and different societies had different mythologies about how the universe came into existence, and there are a whole bunch of them. So here is one, for example, in Babylon. The Babylonians had a god named Marduk, and there was also another goddess, the goddess of the sea. His name, or her name we should say, was Tiamat. And there was a war between Marduk and Tiamat. Tiamat wanted chaos, and Marduk wanted existence. And we won't get into the details of the story, but Marduk ends up winning the war and he created the earth and the heavens from her divided body. So you get the idea. This was the way the world was explained before ancient Greek philosophy. But all of these ideas will be challenged, as I will talk about in this video. Xenophanes believes that the image of the gods in Greek mythology was too anthropomorphic. That means it had the shapes of humans. For example, Apollo, Artemis, or Athena, and a bunch more. Xenophanes writes in one of his passages that the Ethiopian gods are snub-nosed and black. The Thracian gods are blue-eyed and red-haired. How could you have so many different gods, all having human shape, but with different faces and features? Something doesn't sound right here. Xenophanes continues, and I quote, "But if horses or oxen or lions had hands, or could draw with their hands and accomplish such works as men, horses would draw the figures of the gods as similar to horses, and the oxen as similar to oxen, and they would make the bodies of the sort which each of them had." Unquote. So Xenophanes believes that the images of the gods are the direct consequence of human imagination, and it's nothing more. Humans have created the gods. The Greeks also had another goddess named Iris, and every time there was a rainbow in the skies, the Greeks thought that Iris was manifesting itself. And this is what Xenophanes said about Iris, and I quote, "She whom men call Iris is in reality a cloud, purple, red, and green." Now on the issue of epistemology or the theories of knowledge, Xenophanes believed that even if there is a reality out there, human beings are unable to comprehend it or understand it. And based on these theories, Xenophanes came up with his idea of the God. Xenophanes' God, first of all, was one. Not many, but one. And this was the beginning of monotheism in Greek philosophy. Secondly, Xenophanes' God was invisible, because human beings were unable to reproduce it, imagine it, or draw it, or even talk about it. Third, Xenophanes' God was transcendent, because it was beyond the understanding and comprehension of humans. And fourth, Xenophanes' God was intelligent, because it had created order out of chaos. It had created the universe. And Xenophanes' God was the first cause of everything. It was present from the beginning of the universe. And this is the first time this abstract concept of the God is introduced by a philosopher. Parmenides of Elea, also a student of Xenophanes, he believes that there are two ways we acquire information: the way of sense and the way of truth. However, the way of sense is always an illusion, therefore it is always false. For example, the colors, they are illusion. Motion, illusion. Time, illusion. So the way of sense can never be trusted. Unlike Xenophanes, who thought that humans are just incapable of understanding the truth, Parmenides has left us a path in which we can acquire the truth, and that's logic, mathematics, and rationale. So he uses his rationale to come up with an understanding of the absolute being or the divine. And this is his most famous statement. Something cannot come out of nothing. That means if you imagine an empty universe, you cannot have the trees and the planets and the humans just popping out of this nothingness. Parmenides says something always comes out of something. Something must have always existed, so we exist today. And that something is a one. Now, how do we understand this God? Parmenides thinks that you cannot understand this one or this God by the way of sense, because the sense is always an illusion. You cannot give it any shape, any color, or you cannot imagine it. The only way you can understand God is by the way of truth or the logic. And so Parmenides' God is kind of close to Xenophanes' God, something transcendent, something that goes beyond the senses, something that is uncreated and unchanging, but most importantly, something that always existed. Parmenides also believed that change is an illusion. Why? Because change is something that you can experience with your senses. And if change is an illusion, the universe has always been the way it was, and it will be the way it was. The universe never changed. It remained the exact same thing. Now, contrary to Parmenides, there's another Greek philosopher whose name is Heraclitus. And Heraclitus thought that change was everything. The universe was always changing, and it will always be changing. The famous statement by Heraclitus is that you cannot enter the same river twice, because the river is always changing. The water will not be the same the next minute you put your foot inside that water, although you call the river the same name. Now you can apply more modern examples to this theory. For example, I, as a person, may not be the same person as I wake up tomorrow, because my cells have aged a little bit and I have added some knowledge and experience. Although the change is very intangible and slight, but still I have changed a little bit. And you can apply the concept to the universe. For example, the Big Bang. About 13.5 billion years ago, the universe came into existence, and then it changed and changed until it became to what it is today. So Heraclitus' universe is a world of becoming, not a world of being. The world of being is Parmenides' world. The world of becoming is Heraclitus' world. So that which governs the rules of the change is the God. So when you're going from disorder and chaos to order and existence, a change is happening. Who runs the show? Who determines how chaos is turned into order? And that who is the God. And from now on, Greek philosophy will be pushing theology towards monotheism, worshipping one God only, and the shift will be very slow and gradual in the Middle East and the Mediterranean. For example, Judaism was the religion of Israel, and sometimes between 500 BC and 600 BC, the religion switched from polytheism to monotheism, and it happened sometimes after the Babylonian captivity back in 530 BC. We're not sure what happened, why they changed from several gods to one god, but we do know that it was contemporary with the Greek philosophy, specifically the philosophers that introduced the notion of the one, having one God only. Now, a few hundred years after, Christianity was born from Judaism in Israel, and then it spread into Europe. Now, the Christians, although they believed in three types of divine beings, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, in general, the Christians are considered to be monotheist. They worship one God, and the God they believe in is an abstract concept of an invisible, transcendent, and infinite force. 600 years after Christianity, Islam emerges from Saudi Arabia, and Islam was strongly monotheistic. It did not allow multiple gods. Also, the concept of the God in Islam was the same powerful, infinite, and invisible force. So we can put things together now. Before the emergence of Greek philosophy, the religions of Middle East and Mediterranean were mostly polytheistic. They worshipped multiple gods. Monotheism was very rare. For example, there used to be one in Egypt around 1300 BC, and there was one in Iran. Their god was Ahura Mazda. It started at around 1000 BC all the way to 5